Bonjour à toutes,
hello and welcome to the studio for Generation Hydrogen. This is going to program to let you understand everything about hydrogen. You know that hydrogen plays a crucial role in energy transition, but how does it get produced? And what are its prospects for future development? We're going to spend an hour and 15 minutes together looking into interviews, special features, and we're going to be telling you all about hydrogen. But let's welcome first our first guest, the guest that's going to be with us all through this program. He is pulling up in front of the building of Les Échos Le Parisien. We're talking about Benoît, who is the CEO of Air Liquide, and he is being welcomed by David Béraud, the editor-in-chief of Les Échos. It's all yours.
Bonjour.
Yes, hello, good morning. Thank you, Marjorie. Right now I'm in front of the Les Échos magazine on the Esplanade. There's a very quiet car driving up. Apparently it's a hydrogen-powered car. Benoît Potier, the CEO of Air Liquide, is aboard that car. We've seen more and more of these hydrogen-powered cars in Paris now. There are people who talk about hydrogen and people that actually work with hydrogen. We'll be discussing this with Benoît Potier. Benoît, welcome to Les Échos. Follow me.
Mr.
Potier, you just got out of a hydrogen vehicle. Tell me how it works. Well, first of all, it works. That's a good thing. It does drive. It's an electric vehicle. Like all battery vehicles, it's electricity that drives them forward. But here the electricity is produced on board. You store the hydrogen. It's then put into a fuel cell, which in turn generates electricity, and that drives the motor. It says Hype on the car. Is that a new car brand? Hype is a brand name. We created it during COP21 in 2015 with a business person who came to meet with us and asked if we could get together to set up an electric taxi company in Paris. He'd tried with batteries, they didn't work well. The business model wasn't right. So he came to meet with me and asked me, could we do this using hydrogen? We then started together with 5 taxis, gradually, more and more. We've got 140 taxis now in Paris. We're expecting 600 next year, which is to say good coverage for the whole of Paris. We get the impression hydrogen is for the distant future, but you're saying no, it's already part of our daily lives. That's absolutely true. I came in a hydrogen car every morning. I come to my office in a hydrogen car. I've been doing it for 3-4 years now. Now, it's entirely true. It works. It's not yet accessible to everyone, but we've already proven that it is possible. Okay, hydrogen's being talked about more and more. More and more people are interested in it. There's still a lot of question marks, lots of solutions yet to be found, challenges we have to rise to. You'll be talking to us about all of this in just a few moments. You'll be coming to our set for the first part of Generation Hydrogen.
Si je vous parle d'énergie hydrogène, allez-y, levez le doigt ceux qui connaissent et qui savent comment ça marche. Personne ? Ouais. Voilà.
L'hydrogène, comme l'oxygène, le fer ou le cuivre, est un des 92 éléments naturels connus à ce jour qui composent l'univers.
Alors, tout paraît beau, mais il y a quand même un petit souci.
Il n'est jamais présent à l'état pur, c'est-à-dire qu'il est toujours lié à d'autres atomes.
Par contre, on est d'accord avec vous, le nom fait un peu peur. On dirait un peu le nom d'une arme de méchant dans un film de super-héros.
C'est l'utilisation la plus connue de l'hydrogène, un carburant pour des voitures qui ne rejettent que de l'eau.
D'ici 15 ans, on volera peut-être dans des avions complètement propres, qui n'émettent aucun CO2, des avions à hydrogène.
Magnifique. Et il est pas beau ce Daniel.
Alors, le train à hydrogène, ce que je vous annonce aujourd'hui, c'est qu'on va s'y engager à fond, parce que ça, c'est une vraie solution.
On ne pourra pas tout décarboner seulement avec l'électricité. Et c'est pour ça qu'aujourd'hui, on dit souvent que l'hydrogène, c'était un peu la pièce manquante de la transition énergétique.
Avant de tous carburer à l'hydrogène, il va falloir le rendre vert, effectivement.
En fait, le problème, c'est que l'hydrogène, aujourd'hui, il faut le produire. Et quand on le produit, à 95%, on utilise pour ça des énergies fossiles. Et donc, on dégage énormément de CO2.
Demain, une nouvelle technique quasi miracle doit permettre de fabriquer de l'hydrogène 100% écologique.
Ça me donne une idée. Dans l'eau, il y a de l'hydrogène. Eh bien, on doit pouvoir obtenir de l'hydrogène en faisant l'électrolyse de l'eau.
Voilà, vive l'hydrogène, notre sauveur.
C'est donc l'objectif des 7 milliards d'euros qu'on a mis dans le plan de relance. Il faut décupler l'électrolyse et puis il faut largement diviser les coûts.
Moi, j'avais arraché, si je me souviens bien, difficilement 100 millions d'euros, ce qui n'était pas suffisant. Bon, là, je vois qu'il y a 2 milliards. Et très sincèrement, je salue cela.
Sur l'hydrogène, la France n'est pas en retard par rapport à d'autres pays européens, mais l'objectif est de passer à la vitesse supérieure.
Dans le monde, la course est déjà lancée. En Chine, le gouvernement coupe les aides aux voitures électriques et passe à l'hydrogène.
La Commission européenne a présenté ce mercredi sa stratégie. Elle propose de produire d'ici 2024 près d'1 million de tonnes d'hydrogène renouvelable.
Doucement, mais sûrement, l'hydrogène est en train de passer de simple niche de recherche à une alternative crédible.
Benoît Potier,
Benoît Potier is now with us here for the second segment of this program. As you know, we're extremely safety conscious here in the studio, so hand sanitizer is compulsory. We're being socially distanced for this interview. As you can see, we're more than 6 feet apart. So, Monsieur Potier, you can remove your mask, and we're going to start right away.
Bonjour Benoît Potier.
Bonjour. Hello Benoît Potier.
Tout le monde en parle, véritablement.
So everybody's talking about hydrogen.
Les institutions,
the institutions, the media, the public. So why are we talking about it today?
I think it's because it's of great general interest. Everybody's awareness worldwide has risen about climate problems. So very naturally, we think toward hydrogen. It's a product that Liquide has been producing and selling and developing for almost 40 years.
Back to the basics, si j'ose dire.
So back to basics. If we go back to square one, where does hydrogen come from?
You can't find it in a natural state. You can't just find it somewhere. But it is very abundant in the universe. It's actually the most abundant element in the universe. But to recover it, you must produce it. 2 main sources, water, of course, water electrolysis, and hydrocarbons, natural gas, for instance, which contains a great deal of hydrogen. So 2 main sources, plus lots of questions about how to produce.
Si je comprends bien, tout le monde veut en faire de l'hydrogène.
If I understand, everybody wants to produce hydrogen, but is everybody capable?
Not everybody is capable. There's a specific know-how. It's in a gaseous state. There are specific features involved here. You've got to think of safety, so not everybody can make it. We've got a great deal of experience, and not everybody knows how to produce it because you need specific technology. You need a mastery of production technology, also packaging and delivery. So it's a great deal of know-how required for hydrogen, but I hope in the future this know-how will be beneficial to everyone, the entire planet.
So hydrogen is becoming one of the crucial aspects of energy transition. How can we really make it work, and what's the timeline?
That's a very good question. First of all, we need to start now. That's a very important point. We're in a period of transition. Transition means there's a starting point and a finishing point. We must begin now. Very important. Next, we have to organize an entire sector, robust sector. Sector means overall environment, a regulatory environment, appropriate regulations, production tools. We need research seeking to improve on existing technology and move on it further to cut costs, for instance, then packaging, transportation, up to the user. And then we need applications. In a car, to use hydrogen, you need a fuel cell to generate electricity, which powers the car.
And we're going to be looking into the applications throughout the program. But if I hear you properly, you really are mobilizing a whole ecosystem around hydrogen. And it's been 4 years, hasn't it?
Yes, 2 points here. Let's talk about what happened worldwide. We created the World Hydrogen Council with 13 companies. That was in 2017 in the cold Swiss mountains in Davos. Now there are about 100 companies on board, 100 global companies. All the main countries are represented, all sectors, I'll also mention. So we're talking about a true coalition. But in the interim, there have been national initiatives taken as well, in Germany, in France, in the UK, and in Northern Europe. To be successful, These coalitions must succeed, but you've also got to have national efforts made. Very important to me. We need to be successful equally, nationally, also at the European level. Europe is the appropriate level to be successful.
Yes, the European level. We're going to be talking about this. Stay with me, Benoît Potier, because we now have a special guest. He's a doctor, he's an explorer. He has been the very first to circumnavigate the globe in a balloon, and he's the man behind the Solar Impulse solar-powered plane. And more recently, he beat the range record for hydrogen cars with the Hyundai Nexo, which he drove for 778 kilometers. Bertrand Piccard. Here we are back again. Good evening, Bertrand Piccard.
Good evening to you both.
Delighted to have you here, but I'm not the only one delighted because I think you've known Bertrand Piccard for a long time, Mr. Potier. You go way back, don't you?
That's absolutely true. It goes way back. Solar Impulse, this goes back to when? 2017. Well, at the very beginning, we were talking about life support systems so that pilots could breathe in high altitudes. That was an initial collaboration. Then in 2013, more of a collaboration renewed, and then in 2017. I can remember a story with Bertrand. Bertrand was at our 100th anniversary video, 2002. I can remember, you could see his face. It was real inspiration to the 4,000 Air Liquide shareholders of the Palais des Congrès, the AGM, talking to us about the future and invention. I can really remember that day. 20 years later, Bertrand as inspiration to all of Air Liquide for our 100th anniversary. Yes, and why? Because Air Liquide had endured a meter snow, a strike of transportation workers on Sunday to bring helium to fill the Breitling orbiter balloon to do the world-round tour. So it's a real tradition.
I see. Actually, you were talking about enduring stuff. You have endured the most amazing things. But there's something else you're going to have to endure for energy transition, and that's why you set up your foundation, isn't it?
Because I don't accept this dilemma, the dichotomy. On the one hand, negative growth leading to social chaos. On the other hand, this myth of unlimited growth leading to ecological disaster. There's a third way, which is what I like to call quality growth. That's when you create jobs, you make business and economic profit, you replace what's polluting with things that don't pollute, that are good to the environment. Solar Impulse has launched a challenge for that reason, to gather 1,000 technology solutions, certify them. They protect the environment. They're financially viable. We're going to bring them to heads of state and government, to companies, to institutions, to give them the wherewithal, the technical tools, so that they can reach their environmental objectives.
It's sustainable and it's profitable. We're going to see a number of examples in a second. But you're supporting this foundation. Concretely, what does that mean?
The partnership starts with skills sponsorship. Over 34 Air Liquide experts that work side by side with foundation experts to take a look at and examine solutions. There, in the near future, there'll be 1,000 solutions that have been submitted and sifted through, selected, shortlisted. The Air Liquide experts help in the selection process. We've gotten very excited, very interested in this. We ourselves have submitted our own solutions, and several have been shortlisted. I think 13 today have been shortlisted. And then, of course, we've got our financial partnership under this joint work with the Solar Impulse Foundation.
In other words, it's a win-win situation?
All partnerships are win-win.
We were talking about this with Mr. Potier earlier. Hydrogen is an ecosystem. What do you think about that?
What is crystal clear, hydrogen has friends where batteries have enemies. In other words, today, you can include the oil industry in distribution and sales of hydrogen. You can't do that using batteries. we can be energy self-sufficient. We use renewable energy and then store it as hydrogen. This is fundamentally important. This means we can become freed of any negative dependency, which can be negative for the trade balance in Europe. No doubt about it. We have to realize Europe is way behind in terms of batteries, lagging behind. Europe lost the battery war, so to speak. So Europe's making every effort to win the hydrogen war, if we can term it that way. So this is bringing together many different players. That's what will help.
In other words, it's all about sovereignty.
Yes, it's all about sovereignty, job creation, new industrial outlets. If we want to be successful in the energy transition and ecological transition, this is a must-do. We can't just talk about big environmental ideologies. If it doesn't make it possible for us to develop and move toward real transition, then necessarily we'll fail at the very outset. That's why I believe in the energy revolution. Hydrogen has great potential.
Benoît Potier, food for thought?
Yes, it's a very important point. We're talking about an ecosystem. It's fundamental to realize that. When you're talking about hydrogen, you can't work alone. You've got to work together in a group. You've got to band together, join together with others. You have to think in terms of the full chain, starting from the beginning to the very end.
Gentlemen, if I understand, today, going for hydrogen is an activist stance?
It's an activist stance that will be logical tomorrow and commonplace in the future. I'd go so far as to say it's responsible, being responsible. Bertrand and I agree with three beliefs. The first belief, we have to act for the climate. Fundamentally important. We must do that right away. Secondly, we need technology, different types of technology. We've discussed them. The foundation is doing its job in certification. And we need people to bring this forward, who need to act as ambassadors. This is the spirit of what we're doing today right now via our cooperation with the foundation.
We're going to be talking about the men and women who are going to be working in this ecosystem a bit later on in this program. But let's first of all take a little boat trip. Okay, this is a boat that's both a lab and an advocacy project for energy transition. It's called Energy Observer, and since 2017 it uses renewables and hydrogen to go round the world. It's going to take 6 years to do that. No stops, 50 countries, and we're going to see the skipper just now, Victorien Roussard.
The scientific knowledge, the technical ability, and the materials to pursue the exploration of the universe.
Ignition sequence starts. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running.
La Terre. Il y a plus de 50 ans, l'hydrogène nous a permis de partir à des milliers de kilomètres d'elle. La plus petite molécule de l'univers, la plus légère et la plus abondante sur Terre, est capable d'accomplir de grandes choses. Energy Observer est une plateforme expérimentale des énergies de demain. Un bateau intelligent, révolutionnaire, qui navigue sans abîmer la planète. Sa propulsion électrique est alimentée par des énergies renouvelables, soleil, vent, courant marin. Mais ce qui le rend unique, c'est sa capacité à stocker son énergie sous forme d'hydrogène produit à partir de l'eau de mer. Une technologie qui lui permet de naviguer en autonomie totale et qui permet à son équipage de vivre confortablement au quotidien.
Cette odyssée à bord d'Energy Observer, c'est un grand pas vers la transition énergétique. L'hydrogène produit à bord, c'est le véritable allié de notre mix énergétique puisqu'il nous permet, tout en restant léger, de stocker une grande quantité d'énergie. Il nous permet, même dans des conditions extrêmes ou lorsqu'il n'y a plus de vent ou plus de soleil, de continuer à avancer. À travers ce défi énergétique, on a voulu montrer qu'une autre voie était possible, plus respectueuse pour la planète. Les solutions existent déjà, les technologies, on les a. L'idée maintenant, c'est de déployer les innovations à plus grande échelle et c'est ce qui est en train de se passer un peu partout à travers le monde.
En naviguant sur Energy Observer, on se rend tout de suite compte de son impact positif sur son environnement. C'est 0 bruit, 0 émission, 0 polluant. Et ça, c'est vraiment important pour la préservation des écosystèmes marins. Avec ce bateau, c'est vraiment comme si on se fondait dans le décor. On va véritablement diminuer l'impact qu'on a sur la faune sous-marine. Grâce à l'hydrogène, on peut se tourner vers des énergies propres et préserver notre seul espace de vie, la Terre.
Energy Observer qui continue sa course autour du monde et ce laboratoire sur mer. Vous le connaissez bien,
this is both very familiar with. You've been a partner from day one.
Absolutely. What's truly fantastic with this vessel is it's fully autonomous. It doesn't have to use wind or solar when it's available and it stops when it's not available. No, it was designed from the outset to be able to crisscross the world without any energy input. You have to realize, you take seawater, desalinate it, put it into an electrolyzer, turn it into hydrogen, store it, use as much as wind and sun when it's available, and when it's not available, you can recover the hydrogen and use it to run the electric engines to navigate this vessel. That is the solution for the future, and it proves it's possible.
Une preuve sur les flots. Bertrand Piccard, là aussi.
Bertrand Piccard, this is a project you're very familiar with as well. You were actually on the pictures we just saw. And I know that you gave them a compass, didn't you?
It's the compass from the Solar Impulse dashboard. They've got it on their dashboard to show them their course, their direction. Victoria and their teams will be finding solutions all over the place at all the ports of call to then bring those to the Solar Impulse Foundation to certify them. We've got a long-standing friendship and this shared goal.
Gentlemen, stay with us because a number of other celebrities that are keen on hydrogen are going to be with us. Another extraordinary person is our next guest, Philippe Croizon. Hello, Philippe.
Hello to everyone.
Alors vous vous êtes lancé un pari.
You set yourself a crazy goal. You want to do the 2022 Paris-Dakar rally with a hydrogen car.
Well, why not, I'd say to that. Of all my adventures, 99% of the time people all said, that won't be possible. You can't swim across the English Channel. You can't travel to all 5 continents. You can't drive the Paris-Dakar in 2017. And yet we did it. We've shown those 99% pessimists that it's achievable, it's doable. I want to go back there, using a hydrogen car. People have proposed to go there with thermal cars. I've said no. Really, the future is about hydrogen. Going to the toughest race in the world with a hydrogen car shows the public, reassures the public, shows them we can do it right. This is the future for energy. This is the kind of car you'll be buying and using in the future. In 2022, I'm using this vehicle, and you'll be using this type of vehicle you yourselves. That's what we're saying to them. Also, what inspires me, for years now, since 2008, I've been considering hydrogen vehicles. And I'm fortunate. I met with several people like Patrick Maillot, chairman and founder of Initio, and I love speaking to you today, and I wanted to talk to you about this. He brought in his expertise, his assistance, and now we're pretty much ready. We're on the move and ready to go. So we just need to make the vehicle, get some further assistance, other partners that are assisting us to then demonstrate it's feasible. You said it in the show today. We need a powerful message, a hard-hitting message to people to show them this is the future. Hydrogen is the future. People see it now. They're realizing it. They're doing research on batteries, hydrogen, they're thinking of the environment. They're wondering where we're headed. Here you go. We're showing them. We're showing them the answers, as Bertrand Piccard has shown very well with all his projects. And Bertrand, we could come together. I'd love to work together. I love driving hydrogen cars. I did a world record with a Hyundai Nexo. But it's much softer. It speeds up slowly, no vibration, noiseless. You know this very well already, as well as I do. The important thing is for users to realize this as well. Absolutely. They're reliable, they're powerful vehicles. We're using this at the Paris-Dakar race to show this is a reliable vehicle. It's ready today. We're also demonstrating it to the government authorities, showing to them this is doable, we can do it. So together we can make a better society, what we're all dreaming of. I think hydrogen, you said this very well throughout the show, is our future. It's the future. So for those who are listening, if they're interested with me, I'd love to take them on board with.
Proof of concept, but with a slight bit of hint and nudge, isn't there?
I'm sure, yes, I've heard that full well. And I'd like to really congratulate you on this future feat of achievement. Hydrogen on the Paris-Dakar race, it's not easy, it's very bold and daring. I congratulate you on your courage. This is truly remarkable. I also would like to say I feel some emotion. I'm so glad to see Philippe Croizon smile. Every time I meet with him, I see him smiling broadly. And this is very important. We're enthusiastic. It's a message of positiveness, of hope and belief in the future. We're talking about an adventure. It's all about technology, yes, and we're going to see how we can work together on this. You know, what I often like to say is nothing's impossible. What's impossible is us holding ourselves back. We can move forward. It's up to us to take charge of our own destiny and move ahead. That's a strong message I'd like to convey, which I've already been saying for several years. It's really great. What's wonderful, what's great is that we've certainly got a lot of ideas for future adventures. We can redo everything we previously did with the polluting vehicles, but now with clean vehicles and efficient vehicles. So we'd ask all adventurers, all explorers worldwide to come on board with us.
And where there's a will, there's a way. Thanks for your dares. Thanks for your smiles. Thank you so much, Philippe Croizon. Thanks for having been with us. Benoît Potier is going to stay with us. In a second, you're going to find out more about the market for hydrogen and the employment prospects that are linked to it.
Benoît, great to be meeting with you again. Earlier you said almost 40 years now ago, Air Liquide began working with and for hydrogen. I can remember something you announced earlier. You were thinking back to Davos, where for the first time you talked about your ambitions together with your partners to build a hydrogen ecosystem. I have to say back at that time, some people were skeptical. Some people wondered if it would be successful, if it would develop. We can see today, hydrogen is a reality. You came here today in a hydrogen car. There are Alstom hydrogen trains. There's still some questions. Will hydrogen really become reality? So I'd like to ask you about these points. A first challenge often when we talk about hydrogen is, can we produce green hydrogen? Can we produce hydrogen in a clean fashion? Yes, absolutely. But we have to say on that, hydrogen 40 years ago was produced in the most cost-effective way possible. That's as it should be. You always try to do things cost-effectively. Environmental considerations weren't widely thought about. So for a long time, hydrogen was produced and is still produced with methane. What's called gray hydrogen. Oh, it's hydrogen that used to be called gray, but it's hydrogen that's very cost-effective, economical. It optimizes the production process and not CO2 emissions. Now, the question is, how can it be produced? How can you do decarbonized hydrogen? First of all, you can recover the carbon from hydrogen. There are processes, industrial pilot in France in Normandy, able to recover up to 90-95% of the CO2. So the first well-known method. We know the cost, very important. You can decarbonize almost 100% that hydrogen. There's a second option. Producing using electricity and water. The advantage, of course, is when you're using renewable electricity, that hydrogen is part of a renewable chain. Virtuous. Yes, absolutely. So today we're working very hard, pushing ahead to use water electrolysis technology. So electricity. To make this more competitive, less expensive, so that we can compete with current hydrogen using fully clean technologies. I believe the next 10 years We'll see conventional technology decarbonize gradually, and new technology using electrolysis will be ramped up so that we can hope within the next 10 years, most hydrogen will be produced not using carbon. So there's producing carbon-free hydrogen. What do uses be in the future for the hydrogen? What's the future hold for hydrogen in our daily lives? Well, today, as a well-known use, major industry, chemicals, refineries have been using hydrogen for some tens of years now. Agri-food, electronics, several industries need hydrogen and are using it. So that's the gas you're selling right now. Today, that's your business. That's our current business. Yes, we're very familiar with these clients and these uses. And then you've got new markets that are emerging, mobility markets. Could we consider using hydrogen in all cars? Let's say as soon as possible, within 5 or 10 years. It's true, it already works. My car is a hydrogen car. I use it to come to the office every day, so no, they work. Prices are coming down, prices for these cars. But what I think is fairly quickly, we're going to see other types of transport, heavy transport, that will also develop in this area, and very quickly so. We can understand this. Hydrogen consumption is much more substantial, so you can ramp it up and get economies of scale when it's more concentrated. Think of a train. It'll fill up with hydrogen at the starting point. It'll then do a round trip. When it comes back, it refills. And think of fleets of buses, trucks, for instance. What about boats and ships? We talk about that. And aircraft. That'll be the longer run. But airplanes can certainly operate using hydrogen. So heavy transportation will go in that direction, definitely. Okay, so there's the potential. It'll take some time, but not that much time after all. Is this to say we need to make large-scale investments to support this? Air Liquide Group, you've got shareholders, you need to target profitability. But you're talking about investments. What's the scale of investments we're talking about? Well, objectively speaking, we're talking about very large-scale investments. Let's recall a few figures. In the past 10 years or so, Air Liquide Group, which a specialist in hydrogen, invested tens and then hundreds of millions, was already investing. Yes, already. That's our current investment level. We have easily invested 500 million in development. Our business is around 2 billion euros, so we've had to invest since the beginning overall 4 billion euros. Now you'll be changing order of magnitude. That's right. In upcoming years, we'll be thinking in terms of billions, not hundreds of millions of investments. So we're talking about a further few billion to be investing. We're already investing this amount every year. The idea will be to ramp things up further in the overall markets that are the most important ones. Well, there are some surveys that say by 2050, fairly long away, we hear these surveys, they talk about a gigantic market, 2.5 trillion would be the market size. What do you think? Where will this market trend? Where are the main opportunities going to be? And where are the segments that Air Liquide is going to stand out, will position itself? If it's a huge market, I suspect there'll be lots of people contending for it. I'm sure there'll be lots of people vying for the marketplace. But let's come back to these surveys and studies you mentioned. These were studies carried out with members of the World Hydrogen Council and a consultant, McKinsey, helping us to gather all the data pertaining to all sectors involved in hydrogen, to then neutralize the data, and then to work on each of the markets within each major market and the various market segments that could be fairly easily converted to hydrogen and cost-effectively so. So you mean if hydrogen is available in lots of markets, a little chunk that shifts over can be very beneficial? Yes. Think of mobility. What we're already doing. All the forklifts. You know, these vehicles in warehouses, forklifts. Well, currently, it's more cost-effective for a large warehouse to use hydrogen forklifts versus battery-powered. This has been proven. The business case exists. We've seen many sites that are using these more and more. That's just one example of what's already being done. Think of trains now. Alstom recently sold trains in Germany. These were trains, regional trains, that operate now using hydrogen. Why is this important? Let's remember, in Europe, we've got around 50% of the railway lines, particularly regional trains, that haven't been electrified. They're using diesel. That's right, diesel fuel. So if you replace diesel with hydrogen, and we know it's successful, it works. We've got a business case for this today. It works. If we replace this, we'll see huge development in that segment. So that's what we've been doing. It's economically viable today? Yes, economically viable, because you don't have to electrify these lines. Electrification infrastructure isn't required. You economize these infrastructure costs. You only need a storage and distribution facility for hydrogen at the depot where the train stops overnight. The world you're describing, well, seemed a few years ago like a world of science fiction. People thought it might work or it would take a long time. Your wager today, you think hydrogen's going to be part of our daily lives, starting when? Change our lives when? And what will the main uses be for hydrogen, the most frequent ones? What do you think? Well, let's say this. When you think back in history, there was a time of doubt in the past. For about 10 years, we were trying to promote hydrogen. We were explaining it would be important in the future, but people had their doubts. You're not the only one today. No, we're not the only ones today. There's a period of euphoria right now. Everybody's talking about it today, saying it's fantastic. But if you think back to the period, the post-euphoric period, we can realize hydrogen will end up fitting and take its position as a complement, in addition to batteries, in addition to all types of other energy systems that will have their specific features. Hydrogen will take its place as an energy vector. Now, there's one feature that hydrogen has that not all other clean energies have, i.e., it can be stored. Yes, electricity can't be stored except in hydro dams. Yes, it's hard to store electricity in large quantities. You've got hydroelectric dams, yes, but a battery, battery stores for a limited amount of time. If you don't use the battery, the energy ends up being lost. Today, renewable energy is being developed apace, and this is intermittent. That's right. It's available if it's windy out of the sun, and we can't store it. That's why you talk complementarity. Yes, that's what's magical. We can design a system. When the renewable energy is available, we can store it. How do we store it? We store it in underground tanks worldwide. There are salt caverns that exist that are already being used to store natural gas. Hydrogen that will be produced, we will then place in salt caverns, and then we can keep it there 1 year, 1 season, several years. We at Air Liquide have the expertise. We've got operating caverns in the U.S. They've got pipelines. They serve as buffers. They will hold hydrogen in tanks and be put back in the pipeline when the hydrogen's needed. Well, which goes to show you're not alone. When people talk about hydrogen today, everybody gets interested. We asked questions. We opened up a forum to find out if there were any questions, if web users were interested, if they had questions for you. We got over 500 people who asked questions. We've compiled them. And we then decided to ask you audio and video questions that came up the most frequently, a subset of these questions, so others will ask questions in addition to me. We'll hear from the web users in just a moment. Hello again to everyone. Marjorie is back on the set with me. Benoît Potier is still with us. I was saying to you, over 500 people, web users have asked questions. We shortlisted about 10. These were the most frequently asked questions. The web users will speak now. In just a moment, they'll be asking you questions. Marjorie, first question.
Yes, it's a question that everybody seems to be asking. It has to do with the safety of hydrogen. And we're going to listen to Hélène. What about safety when you use hydrogen in public transportation or in private cars? What about cars, buses, trains, and planes?
Yes, that's a very good question. It's one of the very first questions we ask about hydrogen. We can think back, we've got these old memories, we wonder maybe it's a little bit dangerous. Let me tell you, in no uncertain terms, with our experience over the past 10 or more years, if we look at the safety record, it's comparable to any other area, other product. That's the general statistical data I'm talking about. But you're focusing more specifically on transportation, i.e. storage, is there any risk involved here, and so forth. I have to tell you, I've seen interesting experiments. I was in Korea at Hyundai. They showed us a high-speed crash test. This is a car that crashed into an obstacle during the experiment. And I can tell you, after the test, if there was one single thing that was intact and upright, it was the tanks, the hydrogen tanks. Why? Because these are carbon technologies used in aerospace that were used to design the tanks. Hydrogen is a new product. We've fully designed safety in the process, factored into the whole process, and we feel fully safe. I'm safe every morning. I use a hydrogen car. Next question from Eric. We're talking about technology. He asks, is our technology high performance? Let me hear from him now. Question is, do we have, or will we have, high-performance technology for electrolysis purposes, or will we continue to depend on Chinese technology? Thank you. This as well is an excellent question, highly relevant, asking about technology for electrolysis, so using electricity to produce hydrogen. The first thing I'd say to you, we are not dependent on Chinese technology. Existing technology is well known, has been known for quite some time. It's international accessible technology. But the technology must evolve further. You know, to make hydrogen, to produce it, I can show you in my pocket, I've got this little electrolysis device. It uses a battery and water and produces hydrogen. It's fairly simple. As you can see, it can be miniaturized. Now, not everything is available off the shelf today. Not everybody has an electrolysis device in their pocket, and not everybody drives to their office in a hydrogen car. That's true. But what we're doing is we're trying to bring forward existing technology without delving into detail. There's still things to be done to further improve on efficiency in hydrogen production, in alkaline hydrolysis, which is the technology used today. There's another technology, even more promising than that. It's a proton exchange membrane, what we use and we're developing now to develop major projects, large-scale projects, 50 to 100 megawatt projects. This is technology. It's not French, it's not German, American, or Chinese. It's open for the taking today. This is why Europe, Germany, France, major European countries are moving on this technology, proton exchange membrane. So it's a wide open field. There is no monopoly today, but we do need to focus. We need to make efforts at the European level. We need to further fund research to make sure that the membranes I'm talking about are world-class. We're doing this. So the battle's just beginning. Next question from Armand. Has to do with biomass. Biomass is the buzzword here. Over to you. Good morning, Mr. Potier. I'm Arnaud Labruyère. I saw in a trade magazine on the timber industry that hydrogen can produce using biomass. Air Liquide, is it interested in that type of production and processing? Thank you very much for that question. Yes, you can also produce hydrogen using plant-based materials, wood, all types of materials. You use biomass, therefore. You have to gasify this biomass, turn it into a gas. Processes are usually high-temperature processes. You have to provide energy, apply energy. It produces hydrogen, also produces CO and CO2. You then have to convert the CO into CO2 and recover the CO2. This is a system that produces CO2, therefore, but using biomass. Next question builds on this. Veronique wants to know how the nuclear power plants could play a role in the hydrogen market. Over to Veronique.
Hello. Our nuclear power plants are getting quite old today. How are we going to manage to produce enough power if all cars are suddenly hydrogen fueled, or at least to a large extent? Thank you.
Yes, that's also a very interesting question. We're considering all of this, figuring out how the whole system can interact. Now, Madam, what we have to do is invest further in producing renewable electricity, so more wind power, think of offshore wind farms, a lot of wind out there, better yield. We have to then bring that electricity to the ground. And then there's solar, where you've got sunlight, that's very interesting. So fundamentally, you're right. One of our challenges is large-scale investment in renewable energy and possibly better use of our existing nuclear facilities.
We're obviously very much on the same wavelength, because we're going to talk wind.
Hello. I live near an area where there are 4 wind turbines producing electricity whenever it's windy out. I'd be a lot happier and aware of their importance if these wind turbines were producing hydrogen that I could then put in my car tank. Do you think this is a pipe dream, or do you think it may become a reality? Sir, no, this is no dream. I can tell you right away. I've seen this done in Japan. In Japan, they've done a lot of tests to produce hydrogen, and they have indeed connected the full system to wind farms as well as solar panels. They produce the hydrogen, they then store it. The hydrogen is used in a vehicle, and that self-same vehicle is then parked before one's house, connected to that house with an electricity cable. It then provides electricity to that house overnight, and it also feeds into the electricity grid. It's a small ecosystem, which is achievable. It's not going to take 5 years. In your neighborhoods, you're going to see people who want to connect these wind turbines to small electricity production, producing hydrogen, storing the hydrogen, and possibly you'll set up a filling station, refueling station near your homes. That's what we've gotten.
In other words, good news, it's feasible. And now we have another question concerning maritime transportation. I hope he's watched the Energy Observer sequence.
Hello, Mr. Potier. We talk a lot about cars with hydrogen trains and airplanes. We haven't heard a lot about hydrogen boats. What's the future for hydrogen in maritime? What do you think, and what's Air Liquide doing in this area? Thank you. This is very interesting. We saw an example of Energy Observer. We haven't talked about boats much, though. I have to tell you, maritime ships, this arrived a little bit later on, but in a fairly big way. Now, we're seeing great interest in all the maritime sector and inland waterways. They're interested in hydrogen. Ships, we talked about markets earlier. This is also an ideal market. By definition, a boat has a departure port and a home port. It must go from point A to point B and refuel using electricity or hydrogen in the future. It's a textbook case in terms of the economics involved. If you can concentrate production at the ports, deliver these boats, you've got economies of scale that you need to make hydrogen cost effective. People in maritime businesses have understood this, inland waterways as well. You can well imagine refilling stations along rivers, banks. This is one focus of ours. We're working as partners with several people in maritime. It's an industry where there's a lot of pressure right now to fight pollution. They've got incentive. Yes, this is because pollution standards for using boat diesel fuel have changed a lot in the recent past, which is why the whole maritime industry is wondering about how they can find solutions.
Okay, now back to your classes, back to your textbooks. Listen to some students.
Bonjour, Monsieur Potier.
Hello, I'm Clément. I'm a high school senior. Recently, in chemistry class, we realized we'd been talking about hydrogen for a long time, and I was thinking, why isn't hydrogen already accessible? Thank you for your answer. Great, high schoolers, senior in high school. Thank you very much for the question, for giving me this opportunity. Hydrogen already exists. As we've said, it's very abundant. We just need to find the right primary energy to produce the hydrogen. Then we need to package it, transport it, and so forth. What you saw in chemistry class, the experiment where you do electrolysis and manufacture hydrogen that way. This is what we're already doing on an industrial scale. There is no major obstacle. All the technologies exist. It's just that they're at varying levels of development, varying costs. Carbon emissions are different as well. Now, we need to optimize these various systems and possibilities. What you saw in high school is something already being used in industry. Okay, two questions. We can pull these together. They're very similar. People saying what you're doing is great, but why isn't it happening faster? Question from James and Caroline. Hello, I'm James Vesh. I'm interested in using hydrogen. It's a non-polluting fuel. What are the impediments today? Why isn't this fuel developing faster for vehicles? In addition to this, I'd like to know, what's the timeline? When will the obstacles be removed so that more of us can be using hydrogen vehicles?
Hello, everybody. I was wondering whether the use of hydrogen wasn't going to be stymied by the high cost of filling stations. Thanks for answering that.
We've got two questions. Yes, absolutely. Well, you've given me an opportunity now to talk about impediments, obstacles. I think we've talked a lot about economics, technology. Now let's talk about regulations. One of the obstacles was, and to some degree still is, the appropriate definition of the regulatory environment. Why do we need regulations? We need safety regulations. We understand that full well. We need regulations governing carbon prices, the pros and cons. So we need the overall regulatory environment so we can invest. When you make an investment, you need a time frame. It's got to be a long time frame, 10 to 20 years. We don't have enough regulation yet. What we are doing now, particularly via the Hydrogen Council. It's international. We've got representatives from all over the world, from all industries. We're working together with governments, with the European Commission in Europe, to try to define the best type of regulations to promote the development of hydrogen. In Caroline's question, there was something more specific about the cost, and specifically the distribution network. Now we have service stations that sell gasoline everywhere, but to set up a refilling station infrastructure for hydrogen might be costly. It could be costly, yes. You have to remember, the world took 100 years to develop the entire oil infrastructure it has. You just had a few cars to begin with, and gradually things developed. It took 100 years of investments in filling stations that exist currently. You can't replace 1 century's worth of investments by waving some magic wand. So we do it slowly and gradually. We can work together with governments on this to try to define within this area, such as France, for instance, or Germany, where the right locations would be. Using the motorway networks or highway networks, where should we invest? We could plan investments. But let me come back to a point. A hydrogen refueling station isn't all that expensive if there are enough cars to use it. It's the idea of the chicken and the egg. We've tried to reconcile this at the Hydrogen Council, thinking we're not going to go around in circles, say, well, you need to make the cars. Others say, no, but you need to make the refilling stations first, then I'll make the cars. So we've tried to cooperate on this, working with people from Japan, from Germany, people from France, such as Alstom, for trains, precisely to jointly invest so that together we can, so to speak, prime the pump, get things going so we can develop this. A refilling station needs around 300 vehicles to use it for it to be basically cost effective. So as you can see, we're not talking about a very high figure. We've done the calculations, but today you'd only have 10 to 20 vehicles since there aren't enough overall. That's why we think heavy transport would be the right opportunity. If we do a nice refilling station at an airport or a port or a train depot, these can be open to the public to refill their cars. So you can well imagine these sort of concentric circles for refilling stations. And then private individuals could refuel their cars at the...
In other words, this is a revolution where everything is happening at the same time.
Prochaine question, elle nous vient de cette
The next question comes from one of the younger people.
I'm Théo Desmarais. I study at the INSA Lyon Applied Sciences Institute. My major is Energy and Environment Studies. I'm interested in this area. What are the organizers, the laboratories, the businesses that are looking for young scientists, engineers, researchers who are looking for us, who have new ideas, look at things in a new way, and are interested in a sustainable world? Who to get in touch with and how to get in touch with them is my question. Thank you, Théo, for that question. I think a lot of young people are wondering the same thing. It's almost a pitch for a job you're making. Welcome. I welcome you. Absolutely. For the time being, there aren't very many companies. This is a sector that is the beginning stages. It's true, Liquide is a major player in the area. We hire approximately 7,000 people per year, about 1,000 in France, between 500 and 1,000, depending on the year. And I'm sure that out of 1,000 hires in France, more and more of them are going to be for hydrogen-related jobs. We're going to need to turn to companies such as Air Liquide. You need to turn to other companies. Think of the OCEA. They work on this subject a great deal. There are other companies as well you could turn to, in other energy companies that will develop further. There are also startups. We know it's all about entrepreneurship. Startups are interested in new technology. We see many of them in this area. There'll be further startups. So you need to have a wide-ranging approach. Look every which way. But certainly we intend to hire a lot of young people. We're already doing it, and we will continue to do it. If you were at Air Liquide, you'd certainly be welcome. A last question in this sequence. This one comes from Isabel, a question from an elected official interested in France and the benefits of hydrogen. We'll hear from her.
I am a locally elected official, and I have a question for you. The hydrogen ecosystem in France, do you feel it can really develop on the basis of local projects, or do we really require a national policy? Furthermore, could you tell me a bit more about the economic advantages of developing hydrogen in France? Thank you.
Merci, Madame. Et effectivement, c'est
Yes, that's an aspect we didn't talk about yet, and it's very interesting to review this. You've talked about two levels, the level of local territory, then the national level. I'd add a third one, Europe. I said this earlier. There are various things that need to be done at each of these levels. First of all, the local level, what we call the territory. Yes, there are lots of projects that are going to be important and meaningful if and only if we can establish mini ecosystems, as I term them. We have to manage to get various people working side by side, producing renewable energy locally, hydrogen production locally, storage, and then distribution within a radius to be defined geographically. A local radius, yes, and the uses need to be multiple. For instance, imagine one region or a département in France. Imagine we've got this ability to have wind power, solar power, produce renewable energy, produce hydrogen, store it, and then what do we use it for? For refilling stations, and then we think of buses, regional buses. They could also be hydrogen buses, or regional trains could also refill their hydrogen tanks. That's what I mean by ecosystem at the regional level. But to achieve this, to make things cost-effective, you have to also work at the national level. Research programs, cooperation on major projects. Here we're talking about the national, countrywide level. Then even further on, if we want to really do research, projects entailing hundreds of millions of euros to really develop technology. In this instance, you're talking about European projects. With the Spanish, German, French corporation working together, building plants that cost hundreds of millions. This would help make for breakthroughs. Here we're talking about the European scale. We need to work at every single level, local, national, and European. Thank you for all those answers, but you're not off the hook yet. Marjorie has met with the young generation, the Generation Hydrogen. They've got some questions for you. Let's go to the field now.
Yes, just watch this first. Remember, at the beginning of this program, we were talking with Benoît about the men and women who are going to really make the hydrogen sector work. Where are we going to find the brain power that's going to be so essential to the development of the sector? And we went to Grenoble and we interviewed a number of kids who are doing a master's program in energy with a special focus on hydrogen. And we're going to watch their reactions.
On a voulu créer ce master pour répondre à des grands changements de contexte, en fait, avec forcément de nouveaux métiers à anticiper, nouvelles compétences.
Bah oui, c'est compliqué, c'est la mode du vert, c'est la mode du changement.
Depuis 2020, l'hydrogène, c'est un peu dans toutes les bouches.
On a un peu l'impression que c'est l'énergie magique.
Un commissaire européen qui qualifiait l'hydrogène de la rockstar de l'énergie.
Si je devais qualifier l'hydrogène en un mot, ce serait...
Ce serait un pari.
Expansion.
C'est très vieux l'hydrogène.
Prudence. En un mot, en plus, c'est compliqué.
Je recommence.
Commencer, t'inquiète.
Vecteur d'énergie.
Stockage.
Le mix énergétique du futur, c'est un mix qui est équilibré. C'est un mix qui est décarboné.
On aura une génération hydrogène, mais ce ne sera pas une génération 100% hydrogène.
Est-ce que vous recrutez? Non, je ne sais pas.
La première bonne question à se poser, c'est pas quelle est l'énergie du futur, c'est quels vont être nos besoins du futur.
Voilà, je trouve que ça fait 20 ans que c'est pour demain, et du coup j'aimerais bien savoir ce que le PDG d'Air Liquide en pense.
Je pense qu'une des solutions pour développer l'hydrogène vert de façon massive est de relier la production d'hydrogène avec le parc nucléaire. J'aimerais bien savoir ce que M. Potier en pense.
Comment s'assurer de manière générale que la filière européenne de l'hydrogène ne se délocalisera pas hors d'Europe ?
I think we're going to ask the CEO of Air Liquide. But first of all, how would you define this generation?
They're very dynamic, very enthusiastic. They have a vision. They're not apprehensive. They're very receptive. They're open to different types of energy. They're realistic as well. We're engineers. Many of us in the area of hydrogen. Not only engineers, but lots of engineers. We need to really build things carefully, so they need to be very serious and careful. Things are fairly euphoric now, but we're going to go beyond the euphoria and become realistic, to actually craft something, build it. That's an expectation of young people, for them to be realistic, enthusiastic, yes. It's wonderful that they are. It's great. This is something that's wonderful. I have great expectations.
Talking about realism, that's a question. We've been putting this off for 20 years. How do you react to that?
It's absolutely true. People often say they're very straightforward. They speak frank. I've been doing this. I've been involved for 20 years already. So it's not just I hear about it, I've been involved. It's been a long-term process. Convincing people of this. Initially, you're sort of swimming against the tide. I was always speaking in favor of this, and people cast doubt. I'm glad today, throughout the world, people have seen what's happened. There's increased awareness. People have realized. People want for there to be joint action for the climate. COVID had an impact as well to some degree. COVID, yes, it's been a tipping point. We're at a tipping point. We're reconsidering things, asking what we want to make of our lives, what's our future hold. Yes, it's coming together. And this is leading to hydrogen, especially when we're talking about energy transition. Because it's a wonderful solution. It exists. I'm not afraid about the idea of 20 years. I spent a lot of my career going through this lengthy period of waiting. I'm glad it's prospering.
You have to contend with uncertainty in 2020. I think Justine was asking a question you answered in part earlier. What about the nuclear power plants and hydrogen?
Certainly there's going to be a dilemma. We want to develop renewable energy, but we don't have access to enough renewable energy, which means we also need to be using available energy, low carbon available energy, the time it takes.
We talked a lot about this, and Lois was asking this question about relocation.
I don't have that fear because it doesn't exist yet. So we're first of all going to locate it in Europe. Everybody's doing the same thing. All the major industrial countries, Japan, Korea, China, in Asia, the European countries, Canada, I think in the near future the US, so all the major countries plus all the industrial countries are working on this. So we're not considering relocating. We're talking about locating, building something, creating something. We need to build it all now. We need the technology, we need the projects, we need to band together. That's why I talk about the European level. We need to work together to build the world leader for hydrogen. I want it to be Europe. There'll be many people rushing in here, lots of forward momentum. Europe is in the lead. In things green, green industry. The European Green Deal is at the core of all of this. This is creating the forward momentum. We've got the demand in Europe, we've got the market. That's going to make it possible for us to build it all. Plus, we've got the talent in all the areas. I've mentioned several: mobility, membranes, electrolysis, ability with an access to Liquide to package and transport and deliver in a safe fashion this hydrogen. We've got it in Europe. We have the wherewithal. We have to coordinate it to be the leader.
A value chain that's about to really emerge that will make us the leaders in the hydrogen sector. We're going to see a little bit more now. Okay, we're nearing the end of this program. We've been together for over an hour. We've been spending over an hour trying to decipher what the trends are. What's going to happen?
My takeaway point is, it's a world of doubt today. People tend to be pessimistic. But we're hearing this morning, it's like during COVID, we see when science works hard and mobilized, it can succeed quickly, like the vaccines. They're finding solutions. Same thing here in hydrogen, similar. There was a period of some doubt. Air Liquide and Benoît Potier were crying in the wilderness. But there's been a shift. Science can make its contribution. It's definitely solving these concrete problems. As Mr. Piccard said earlier, we're not in favor of negative growth. The world knows we need growth, but it's got to be virtuous growth.
Thank you so much, David. Benoît Potier, you get to say the last word.
I
want to use the words that we focus on at the World Hydrogen Council. It's sort of like our roadmap. You know, we've got a roadmap ranging down to 2050. That's our timeline, 2050, and there'll be a milestone around 2030, 2035. So what do we have in mind? Technology. We've got to develop technology. That's certain. Regulation, we've said this. If we don't have a regulatory system, we won't move forward. Investment. investments have to be made. We're prepared. Industry's ready. Governments have understood. We're doing this through partnerships, public-private partnerships. These are investments, and financial institutions are also in the loop, such as infrastructure funds. We have to contain costs, address costs. Technology exists. We want it to be fully competitive, and then we have to communicate. We have to talk about it. We have to do wide-scale communication, be crystal clear and transparent. That's what we're doing today. I've been very pleased to have this discussion with you and with the web users who've watched today. Thanks.
Thank you so much to both of you. And thank you who've been watching this program, all our guests, Bertrand Piccard, the Solar Impulse Foundation, Philippe Poisson, the whole team of the Sales on the Energy Observer, Victorien Estura, Catherine Nicolet, people from the Grenoble École de Management, and our media partners, Les Échos, Le Parisien, Usbek and Rica.